What's up, Green Bay Packers fans? Welcome back, and as always, thank you for joining me. My name's Paul Brettel, and for today's episode, Packers play the Cincinnati Bengals in their first preseason game here on Friday evening. So I'm going through an article that I wrote over at Packers Wire where I talk about one thing to watch for at each of the Green Bay Packers position groups, and there are some honorable mentions in each of those categories as well, or most of those categories that I'll briefly discuss as well. But first, follow me on Twitter at Paul_Brettel. You can find all my work over at Packers Wire, and hit like on the video, hit subscribe on the YouTube channel. I do greatly appreciate it. So let's dive in here. We'll start, as always, with the quarterback position. So what am I looking for with Jordan Love? Because from the sounds of it, he is going to play a few series. Now, there's a number of things that we could choose from in this category. Now, I've talked about before the process. That's what Matt LaFleur keeps emphasizing with Jordan Love. If the process is done correctly and consistently, the results are going to follow. The process includes getting in and out of the huddle efficiently, a good base in the pocket, throwing in time, throwing with timing, throwing with rhythm, going through his progressions, sound footwork. All of that culminates into what hopefully becomes an accurate pass. So we could be keeping our eyes on all that. What I mentioned here in the article was protecting the ball. Obviously, limiting turnovers is always important, but it really feels like it's going to be at a premium this year with a young offense where scoring points at times very well could be difficult. So giving the opponent additional opportunities to put points on the board, not going to be a recipe for success for this young Packers team. We've seen Love throughout training camp so far, have some turnover worthy passes, throw some turnover. So keeping my eyes on, can he limit those or hopefully not have any in either category against the Bengals here tonight. Another thing that I mentioned with Love is if we see any deep ball passes, how is his accuracy? Because that has been one area where it's been up and down. Now, the Packers have been able to connect on a number of downfield opportunities again during these practices, but there's been some misses as well, particularly overthrows from Jordan Love on those downfield opportunities. So how does he look in that capacity? So there's, again, a lot to watch for, but those are kind of the two big things: downfield passes and taking care of the football. If Love can have a similar performance to what he did during family night, I think we'd all be really excited about it. There were some early overthrows on his part, as Matt LaFleur mentioned, maybe a little extra adrenaline going through him at the start of that practice in Lambeau Field, but he really settled in. There were no turnovers. There weren't even any turnover-worthy passes, took what the defense gave him, and the offense was able to generate some explosive plays as well. So if we can see a similar performance to that, like I said, I think we'd all be very happy. At running back, big things to watch for: who's being featured and how do they perform without the ball. Now, Matt LaFleur said Patrick Taylor, Tyler Goodson, Lou Nichols. There's 3 preseason games. There's 3 guys battling for that third running back role. Each of them is going to have the opportunity to be featured in a game. So we don't know who that's going to be. Friday against the Bengals, my guess is Patrick Taylor, because during Monday's practice, he was seeing more snaps than usual with the starters. He's also listed at the top of the depth chart, or after Jones and Dillon, as a third running back on the unofficial depth chart. So that's my guess, but we'll see. Either way, each guy's going to get their opportunity. And as Matt LaFleur and Brian Gutekunst both spoke about last week, special teams play, blocking ability, and then some pass catching, those are going to be the determining factors in who wins this third running back battle. It's not going to be how they perform with a ball carrier. Now, obviously, there's a certain prerequisite that they have to meet in terms of that ability. But with Aaron Jones, A.J. Dillon, they're taking pretty much all of the traditional running back snaps on offense this year. So if you're the third running back, how are you going to be able to contribute? How are you going to be active on game days to, again, contribute to that, to the Packers roster? And a big reason, or a big way, is going to be on special teams. So keep your eyes on the running backs, but specifically how they perform without the ball in their hands. At receiver, listed Bo Melton and Malik Heath. The wide receiver 6 rolls up for grabs. Both players have been coming on strong over the last week. Matt LaFleur said that they flashed, but it's also going to be important that they carry that momentum into the preseason. So that's what we're going to be looking for. I feel like both of these guys are going to get a ton of targets in these preseason games, because I'm guessing we're not going to see a ton of Watson, Dobbs, maybe even Toure Reed. We'll have to see all that plays out there. But They're going to get a lot of opportunities. It's going to be important that they capitalize on them. And both of these receivers bring a very different skill set to the position. You have Bo Melton, who LaFleur called scrappy and is super fast, ran a 4.34 out of Rutgers, plays a lot out of the slot, has seen a lot of his pass catching opportunities on uh, in the quick passing game, getting him the ball in space where that speed can take over. He's also stretched the field a number of times as well, again, putting that speed into play. Malik Heath, 6'2", 213 pounds, very physical is what Matt LaFleur called him. And again, he's someone who's been able to make some nice plays, contested catches, just not a burner by any means from a speed standpoint, but with his route running, knows how to create that little bit of separation to be able to make some plays. So again, with this roster spot, probably not going to be a ton of offensive snaps that are up for grabs. So special teams contributions, and that's one thing I'm really going to be watching. Where are each of these guys on special teams? Which unit are they with? How many snaps are they getting on special teams in the preseason? Because again, that's where their biggest contribution is going to be. With Grant Dubose, my guess right now is that because he was just activated this week off the non-football injury list, that we aren't going to see him in Friday's game. Honorable mention that I had at the receiver position is Christian Watson. We've seen in practice the versatility that he brings. It's something Matt LaFleur talked about, but I feel like he's being moved around pre-snap so much more this year, which can create opportunities. One of his big passes in practice came from pre-snap where he got aligned on Innis Gaines. It's a very favorable matchup for Christian Watson. During the joint practice with the Bengals, there was a video of him on a crossing route where he got matched up with a linebacker. Again, a lot of that comes from that pre-snap movement that the Packers are going to do a lot of. So his versatility, he's being asked to run a greater variety of routes as well. We think of Christian Watson as this boundary downfield burner who can stretch the defense vertically, and we're going to absolutely see that from him. But he's going to be asked to do so much more this season, so I'm excited to see him on the football field, even if it is going to be in a limited capacity, and just see if we get a little bit of additional glimpse of him used in those additional ways. At tight end, I mean, all eyes on the rookies, right? This is a position where there's a big transition from college to the NFL. Matt LaFleur has called it the second most difficult jump on the offensive side of the ball, behind only quarterback. And a big reason is because of just all the responsibilities the tight ends have. They have to be able to move around the formation. They have to be able to block like offensive tackles and make plays in the passing games like receiver. It's a tough transition. So what do we see from Kraft and Musgrave from a consistency standpoint? Both have a ton of potential. That is clear as day. Musgrave's ability to impact the passing game, we're going to see him targeted a ton. I mean, a ton over the middle of the field. We're also going to see him lined up on the boundary where he's able to create mismatches. There's one rep from earlier in training camp where he was lined up out wide against Corey Ballantyne, the cornerback, and he was able to get a step or two of separation on a downfield, on a go route downfield. So just a really exciting player. And then Tucker Kraft, I wrote about him specifically over at Packers Wire. He's been coming on strong as of late. I thought family night last Saturday was absolutely his best practice to date. Made some impact plays as a blocker in the run game. Contested catch, had a red zone catch. We saw his yards after the catch ability, something he did a ton of at South Dakota State. So can they continue to build on that momentum? On the flip side, there's been missed blocks, there's been drop passes. So just the overall consistency of those two and how they perform in their first preseason game. Honorable mention, Tyler Davis. He's been, to me, the best blocking tight end that the Packers have had in training camp so far. So just to continue to see him build upon the momentum that he's established as a blocker, I'll be keeping my eyes on that as well. On the offensive line, where's Zach Tom lining up? He's been playing most of his time at right tackle. He's clearly ahead of Yosh Nijman in that right tackle battle. But we've also seen him over the last week taking some snaps at center with the starters as well. Matt LaFleur said with Josh Myers, they really need to find consistency with him. When he's playing well, he does play well, but it's just the ups and downs, and having those ups and downs, that inconsistency with a young quarterback, that's, right as the play's getting going, getting things off to a bad start, especially since there's already been 3 botched snaps between Myers and Love in training camp up to this point. So I feel like this will give us a better determination long ways to go, but give us a better determination of how truly up for grabs is Josh Meyer's spot at center. If we see Zach Tom taking serious snaps at center against the Bengals, then it's the competition is very much a full go. But if he's spending most of his time at right tackle, maybe doesn't play any snaps at center, or they're with the second team, I think that might give us a little bit of better idea on where things stand. Onto the defensive side of the ball, the interior defensive line. I'm just excited to see these young guys continue to build momentum. As I've talked about, this has been one of the more impressive units in training camp so far, which is a very, very important and big development for this Packers defense and for this Packers team, because any success that this defensive unit's going to have starts with stopping the run. If it can't stop the run, it leads to the opposing offense in second and third and short situations. The playbook opens up. The defense is on its heels. There's a lot more guessing versus if you're stopping the run and the offense is now in second and long, third and long, predictable passing situations. Defensive front can pin its ears back, get after the quarterback. Secondary is able to play much more aggressively. So it's very important that this unit, we see improvement from this unit this season. And so far we have. TJ Slayton has been a force in the middle. Devontae Wyatt has his flashes at the beginning of the preseason have become much more consistent. Carl Brooks has strung together a really, really nice week and a half of practices. Right now, it seems there doesn't seem to be a practice where he's not generating a pressure or two. And Colby Wooden, he's really established himself as that interior defensive lineman in the rotation. So just excited to see how this group can perform going against what's a pretty good Bengals starting offensive line unit, and see if they can carry that momentum into the preseason. For the Packers offense in these practices, it's been difficult to run in between the tackles against this interior defensive line that, again, is generating a consistent push, has a lot more speed than past seasons, and when they get into the backfield, they do so very, very quickly. At linebacker, I'm going to be watching Tariq Carpenter. This is a position group that seems pretty well set, pretty well established, but Carpenter, he's making the change from safety to linebacker. His role this season is, again, it's going to be on special teams. That's where he's going to make his biggest impact, but it's important as a young player, while versatility is great and he has that he also find a role. He find a defined role, responsibility on the defensive side of the ball that he can contribute to if called upon. And then from there, you start adding more to his plate to maximize that versatility. There's a difference between being able to fill a number of roles and between handling your responsibilities and being able to fill a number of roles versus just a team bouncing you around from role to role, position to position, because they can't find something for you. So Carpenter needs to find that defined role. And he's coming off a family night practice where he had 2 interceptions. He said that was hands down his best practice at the linebacker position. One of the interceptions came off a deflected pass. The other, he just read Sean Clifford's eyes and the play really, really well, jumped the route. Was a nice play overall. So we'll be keeping my eyes on him at the linebacker position. At edge rusher, Lucas Van Ness. He's living up to the nickname Hercules with his speed, his burst at the snap, the power that he brings to the edge rusher position. Talked about it before. Several reps where he's driving Nyman into the backfield, where he's driving Josiah DeGuara into the backfield. So he's been taking more snaps with the starters over the last week. He's going to see, of course, playing time this season. I think the big question really is how much. And in part, that's how his development goes. But where we're really going to see him are on those obvious passing situations where he can just go and get after the quarterback. Brian Gutekunst has said that he might be utilized similarly to Zadarius Smith when we see those third and long, those obvious passing situations, and he's a stand-up pass rusher over the center. So just really excited to see him just because of the skill set that he brings. Some additional things to watch for. As I've commented here before, I've been impressed with his run defense. We'll see if we can maintain that momentum into the preseason. And also, what's his secondary move as a pass rusher? We know he has the power and it works for him very well, but he's also not going to be able to run through every offensive tackle. So when the offensive tackle is able to stand up to that bull rush, how does he counter? What does he do next to try to get pressure on the quarterback? Honorable mention as terms of what to watch for at the edge rusher position is Justin Hollins and Brenton Cox. Hollins is not a roster lock from a salary cap standpoint. If the Packers release them, the dead cap they incur, I believe, is only $155,000. However, he's seen a ton of snaps with the ones. He's listed as a third edge rusher on the unofficial depth chart, and he's seeing starting special team snaps as well. Everything that we've seen in terms of on the field, not to mention how he played with the Packers last year, going back to OTAs to where we are now, says he's going to be on this team. And if he's on this team, that's 5 edge rushers. 6, Brenton Cox is the 6th edge rusher right now. He's listed that on the unofficial depth chart. He spent pretty much his entire training camp with the third team defense. But keeping 6 edge rushers on the 53, that's a lot. Not to say that can't happen or it won't happen, but that's a lot. And it means going lighter at another position group or even 2. So when it comes to how the Packers view Hollins versus Cox, if it's just pure performance on the field for 2023, Hollins is the easy choice. He's, again, for all the reasons I mentioned, but he's also just been way, way more consistent. We need to see more flashes from Brenton Cox. However, Packers are in a transition year. They have, on paper anyways, what looks like a very deep edge rusher group. So if you're the Packers, you're balancing between, do I want Justin Hollins' production as a back-end rotational edge rusher for 1 year, or do I want to roster Brenton Cox, develop him for a year, the young high upside player. So to me, that's where the decision lies. But again, as I went through my roster prediction, I got Hollins on the roster right now because while Cox has a ton of upside, a ton of potential, we need to see that as well on the football field. You can only, bank on so much coming to fruition. You have to see a little bit of it taking place as well. So just keeping my eye again on those 2 specifically at the back end of that edge rusher rotation. At cornerback, Carrington Valentine. He's been starting with the starting defense during Monday's practice, as well as the joint practice with the Bengals on Wednesday. Jair Alexander is fine. He's been on the practice field, but just hasn't been participating in team drills, which obviously tells us that he isn't going to play on Friday, and we are going to see Carrington Valentine with the starters. If any of the Bengals starting receivers end up playing any portion of Friday's game, it's going to be a great test for the rookie going up against a very good wide receiver unit. But Valentine just continues to impress. He started OTAs on the third team defense, and right now he appears to be cornerback 4 on the depth chart. His athleticism is evident. He has great length, allows him to make plays on the ball. After he was picked by the Packers, he was on a media call with us and just talked about how comfortable he is on one-on-ones, how comfortable he is being on an island, and you absolutely see all of that on display. During these practices, we've seen him make a lot of plays on the ball. He had 1 interception against Danny Etling in practice that he took back for what would have been a pick 6. He's got several pass breakups. During his time at Kentucky, those aspects we didn't see a ton of in his game. So great to see that coming along here in these practices with the Packers. But he's been very, very good so far. Matt LaFleur said he's done an unbelievable job. Honorable mention with the cornerbacks. I'm not even sure if he's going to play, but Ennis Gaines, he's missed the last 2 practices with a quad injury. Again, not even sure on his availability, but he's someone who has a path to contribute to this roster in 2023, whether he's listed as a cornerback or listed as a safety. He's been the backup nickel to Keyshawn Nixon. He was a core special teams player towards the end of last season, and again is taking more special team snaps with the starters here in training camp. At safety, who's playing with what unit? We've seen some rotation taking place. The one constant right now is that Darnell Savage is a starter. Rudy Ford was next to him for all of offseason programs and the start of training camp. Jonathan Owens has since been next to Savage over the last week. And then there's Tavarius Moore as well, who's consistently been with the second unit. So just keeping my eyes on, of course, how they play. I think more than anything, what the Packers really want is consistency here. There were way too many missed tackles, way too many miscommunication and coverage breakdowns last year. They just want someone who's going to be reliable right now. And, Jonathan Owens was able to do that specifically as a tackler, as a run defender last season during his first year as a starter with the Houston Texans. So just keeping my eyes on who's with the starters and how much playing time are each of these guys getting. And then, of course, how are they performing? Honorable mention at the safety position, Dallin Levitt on special teams. Again, not sure how much of him we're going to see tonight, but during the joint practice with the Bengals, Wes Hodquitz of Packers.com tweeted out that Jonathan Owens was actually taking some of the snaps on the punt coverage unit as the protector of the punter. And that's a role that Levitt's often filled. So perhaps they're seeing if these other safeties or other players can fill that role, because one of the big questions is it really looks like the core of defensive contributors is going to be Savage, Ford, Moore, and Owens. But you have Levitt as the fifth option right now, and he's only on this team to be on special teams. He's was a core contributor in that capacity last year, has played his entire career under Rich Bisaccia. I've talked about before how Aaron Rodgers commented on Levitt's locker room presence last season, but is just contributing in that one capacity, that one phase of the game enough when perhaps that roster spot goes to Ennis Gaines or Anthony Johnson, who the Packers spent a 7th-round pick on. So just something to keep our eyes on. As I went through in my roster prediction, I still had Levitt on the 53 at this time. I just need to see more in terms of the special teams, potential movement, how guys are utilized, what takes place at the safety position on the defensive side of the ball before, feeling that they would move on from him, but something to monitor. Lastly, with the specialists, I put down the field goal operation. Obviously, Anders Carlson has very much experienced the ups and downs, the roller coaster ride that comes with being a rookie kicker. And as Brian Gutekunst said before Family Night, the Packers knew this would happen. They have patience. They're prepared to weather this storm that comes with relying on a rookie. But since that down week, he's bounced back really well. He was 8 for 9 during Family Night. He was 5 for 6 during Monday's practice and 7 for 10 during the joint practice on Wednesday. So how does he perform? And then as part of that, who's holding? Daniel Whelan or Pat O'Donnell, and how are they doing as holders? These two have been alternating during practices with Carlson's field goal attempts. And obviously in deciding who the punter for the Packers is going to be this season, this is going to be a huge part of it. O'Donnell was signed last season in part because of his ability as a holder, his reliability. And then, as I've talked about before, a rookie kicker, a rookie holder, and Daniel Whelan. I mean, there's some risk involved in that if the Packers do choose to go that route. But again, they're in a transition year. They could be looking for, hoping that Whelan and Carlson can both become their specialists that they know are going to be here for a number of years moving forward. So it's just something to keep our eyes on as the field goal units on the field. Obviously, how does Carlson perform? Who's the holder? And how are they performing as well? So there you have it. Those are my big takeaways, big things to watch for with each of the Green Bay Packers position groups, and as they play their first preseason game against the Cincinnati Bengals. I'm incredibly excited to have some Packers football back. Hope you enjoyed the video. Follow me on Twitter at Paul_Brettel. Find all my work over at Packers Wire. Hit like on the video. Hit subscribe. I do greatly appreciate it. So until next time, friends, take care, stay safe, and as always, go Pack Go.